Ever wondered what wisdom Proverbs 10 holds for us today? Verse 1 tells us a wise son brings joy, while a foolish one brings grief. Verse 2 emphasizes that treasures gained through wickedness are worthless. In verse 3, God promises to provide for the righteous, keeping them safe. Verse 4 highlights that diligent hands bring wealth, while laziness leads to poverty. Verse 5 teaches us that gathering in summer is wise, while sleeping in harvest is foolish. Verse 6 reminds us that blessings are on the head of the righteous. In verse 7, the memory of the righteous is a blessing, but the name of the wicked perishes. Verse 8 emphasizes the wise heart accepts commands, while the foolish talk foolishly. Verse 9 teaches that walking in integrity leads to security. In verse 10, winking the eye brings trouble, but a foolish heart causes pain. Verse 11 tells us the mouth of the righteous is a fountain of life. Verse 12 emphasizes that love covers all offenses, while hatred stirs up strife. In verse 13, wisdom is found on the lips of the discerning. Verse 14 highlights that the wise store up knowledge, while the mouth of a fool invites ruin. Verse 15 tells us the rich man's wealth is his strong city, but the poor man's poverty is his ruin. In verse 16, the labor of the righteous leads to life, while the wages of the wicked lead to sin. Verse 17 teaches that he who heeds instruction is on the path to life. Verse 18 warns that whoever conceals hatred has lying lips. In verse 19, where words are many, sin is not absent. Verse 20 tells us the tongue of the righteous is choice silver. Verse 21 emphasizes that the lips of the righteous nourish many. In verse 22, the blessing of the Lord brings wealth without painful toil. Verse 23 teaches that a fool finds pleasure in wicked schemes. In verse 24, what the wicked dread will come upon them, but the righteous will be glad. Verse 25 reminds us that when the storm has passed, the wicked are no more. In verse 26, like vinegar to the teeth, so is a lazy person to their employer. Verse 27 tells us the fear of the Lord adds length to life. In verse 28, the hope of the righteous brings joy, but the expectation of the wicked will perish. Verse 29 emphasizes that the way of the Lord is a refuge for the righteous. In verse 30, the righteous will never be uprooted, but the wicked will not remain. Verse 31 tells us the mouth of the righteous brings forth wisdom. Finally, verse 32 reminds us that the lips of the righteous know what is fitting.